Have you ever obeyed God's instructions, but you still feel like He's not moving in your life? Well, today I want to go over a few reasons why this may happen that you do not realize. Today I want to read a story to you. And if you want to follow along, go to Numbers chapter 20, verses 1 through 13. To give a little context of what this is about, this is when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they were complaining because they really didn't have anything to eat. So starting at verse 1, it says, "In the first month of the year, the whole community of Israel arrived in the wilderness of Zin and camped at Kadesh. While they were there, Miriam died and was buried. There was no water for the people to drink at that place, so they rebelled against Moses and Aaron. The people blamed Moses and said, 'If only we had died in the Lord's presence with our brothers. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into this wilderness to die along with all of our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink.' Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle, where they fell face down on the ground. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord said to Moses, 'You and Aaron must take the staff and assemble the entire community. As the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and it will pour out its water. You will provide enough water from the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock.' So Moses did as he was told. He took the staff from the place where it was kept before the Lord. Then he and Aaron summoned the people to come and gather at the rock. 'Listen, you rebels,' he shouted. 'Must we bring you water from this rock?' Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, and water gushed out. So the entire community and their livestock drank their fill. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, 'Because you did not trust me enough to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel, you will not lead them into the land that I am giving them.' This place was known as the waters of Meribah, which means arguing, because there the people of Israel argued with the Lord, and there he demonstrated his holiness among them." In this story, God gave Moses two instructions. The first instruction was to gather all of the people, and the second instruction was to speak to the rock so that the rock could start flowing out water. Now, when you read the story, you saw that Moses was obedient to the first instruction. He gathered all of the people around. But when it came to the second instruction, he did it a little differently than what God told him to do. God told him to speak to the rock so that water could flow, but instead he struck the rock twice, basically hitting the rock to get the water to flow. And because of this, God told him that he would no longer see the promised land that he was leading the Israelites to. And so the reason why I wanted to share this story today is because I want us to understand that partial obedience is disobedience, and partial obedience can lead to a breakdown rather than a breakthrough. It can lead to destruction rather than building up to the blessing that you've been praying for God to bring you to. I don't want you to destroy your breakthrough because you are partially being disobedient to God. And I feel like this is really important to talk about because on this podcast, we talk a lot about people who struggle to take that first step. You struggle to even, walk with God. And I want you to gain the courage to do that. I want you to gain the courage to be obedient to the thing that God told you to do. But I also want you to understand the importance of multiple steps. I want you to understand that the first step that God gave you is not going to be the only step that you have to take on this journey. This is just the starting point. And so, yes, it's great when you are able to gain confidence to actually move into the thing and move on to the journey that God is calling you from. But it's important that you don't stop at step one and you continue to obey him every single step of the way. When you don't obey him, you can hinder the very thing that you've been praying for. And that's where you start growing resentment because you're like, well, wait a minute, God, you told me that I was going to have this promise. I trusted you. I took 5 steps on this journey. Why isn't it coming to pass? But what you fail to realize is that in some situations, you are not obeying God the way that you need to in order to get this breakthrough. And so what I want to do, because I realize that when it comes to disobedience, a lot of us do not realize when we are operating in it. And so I want to give you a few ways that you disobey God when it comes to taking the next step onto the journey that he's called you to. And the first way that we show our disobedience is we tweak things that God says to us. So let's go back to the story of Moses. God gave Moses 2 instructions. He told him, gather all the people, and he told him to speak to the rock so that the water could flow out of it. Now, Moses stepped into instruction number 1. He gathered all of the people and he did that correctly. But when it came to instruction number 2, he tweaked what God told him to do. God told him to speak, and instead Moses struck. Now, to Moses, that was not a big deal. But to God, that was significant. And it was so significant that it destroyed Moses from being able to experience the promise that God gave to the Israelites. And so what I want us to understand is that we do the same thing sometimes. God will give us an instruction. And yes, we will take steps and move into it and follow it. But we will tweak it to our comfortability. We will tweak it to what we desire. We will tweak it to how we want to do it. We will tweak it to what we want to see. And then we wonder why we don't feel God. We wonder why it feels like God isn't opening doors. And it's because you're not being obedient to what he told you to do. When he gives you an instruction and you change things inside that instruction, you are no longer doing what God called you to do. You have created your own plan. You have created your own step, and you are going down your own path. If God tells you to speak, don't hit something. If God tells you to write a book about healing, don't write a book about marriage. If God tells you to go to school to become a doctor, don't go to school to become a nurse. Stop tweaking the things that God told you to do, but then feeling like he should bless you because you still took a path similar to what he originally called you to do. Those tweaks are what you desire, and those tweaks are disobedience to what his words to you said. Another way that we become unintentionally disobedient to God is when we stay stuck in one step and we refuse to move on to the next. So with way number 1, it's like you actually did take God's instructions and you actually did move into it. You just tweaked things about it. But with this one, it's like, okay, maybe I did step number 1 and God is calling me to do step number 2, but I'm refusing to move from step 1 to step 2. And the reason why could be fear. It could be fear of going any farther. It can be fear of if this is really going to work out. Another reason could be insecurity. It could be insecurity about, did I do step number 1 right? Is step number 1 perfected? Should I do step number 1 better? Should I keep revamping step number 1 and trying at step number 1 before I get to step number 2? But for some reason, you moved into one step and God is calling you to come deeper, but you refuse. And what we have to understand is that we're not going to fully get our breakthrough until we fully break through the journey. What does that mean? We're not going to fully get to the end until we've complete the journey and move on to the next step, move on to the next destination. Follow God the entire way, not halfway. Following God the entire way, not just at the beginning. Staying stagnant on one step is not going to help you get to what you've been praying and seeking God for. And I just want to say this, because this is something that I struggled with in the past. I was the type of person where God would give me a step and I would be really insecure about my works in that step. And so I would want to keep, revamping it and trying to perfect it. And one day God spoke to me and he was like, the Bible says that my ways are not your ways, right? So have you ever thought that the way you see things and the way I see things are from 2 totally different point of views? What you feel is an insecurity, what you feel is imperfect, could actually be perfect to me. But because you're so concerned about your feelings on this journey, because you're so concerned about your eyesight on this journey, you refuse to follow me forward because you're trying to perfect something that I already see as perfect. I think that is perfect that you trusted me past your fear. I think that is perfect that you trusted me past your insecurity. And guess what? When you keep coming to me and you keep following me, I'm going to put my hand on it so that it can be perfect from your eyes. It's not your job to perfect this. It's not your job to make this better. That's my job. Your job is to just give me what you have. Give me your obedience from your capabilities, because that's what satisfies me. That's what perfection is to me. Your obedience is perfection to me, not the quality of your work. But when you become obedient to me, then I put my hands on it and I allow you to see the perfection in your works. This is what I mean. I talked to you guys about this in past episodes where I said that we have to learn how to trust God blindly. We have to learn how to basically not see things, not understand, for the road to feel a little foggy, but keep taking steps forward. And as we take steps forward, God is going to make things more clear. So on your journey, when you're taking steps, it might feel a little cringy. It might feel like you're not qualified. It might feel like you could have done this better. But God is saying, trust me blindly. Continue moving forward. If I gave you step 2 after you did step 1, that is my confirmation to you that step 1 was good enough. So move on to step 2 and move on blindly. Move through the fog. And when you keep trusting me, I'm going to open your eyes and I'm going to allow you to see how every step that you took, the way that you took it, the way that you showed up with what you had was enough. But you have to trust me enough to do it. And if you don't, you're going to be like a Moses or like the Israelites, where you prayed for something. I gave you my word and I promised that you could have it, but you don't see it. It is not because I'm a liar. It's because you refuse to trust me. You know what God told me when I was preparing for this episode? He said that one instruction can actually transition into disobedience. See, when we think about instructions, we think okay, God gave it to me, so it's only right that I do it. I'm not wrong for doing it. But what we fail to realize is that instructions is only for a season, meaning they have an expiration date. So after you complete that instruction and God says that this instruction has expired, this instruction is no longer good and it's time to move on to the next. And as long as you refuse, you are now operating in disobedience to God. Think about it like getting something like your license or your ID. Your license serves a purpose for a few years, and you are good operating with that license for a few years. But once your birthday hits and that license has expired, if you're caught still stuck with that license, if that license is still something that you're holding on to and you refuse to go get a new one, go walk into the BMV and get something new, your license is going to get suspended. You're going to have to go to court. There's going to be consequences for you holding on to something that has already served its purpose and has expired and the season is over and you still have it. It's the same thing with God's instructions. God is saying my instructions are seasonal. There's a time to do it and then there's a time to move on. And as long as you refuse to move on when I'm telling you to move on, you're not going to see your breakthrough. So you have a decision to make today. How do you want your story to end? Do you want your story to end like Moses, where he started off being obedient to God, but because he could not do it all the way, he missed out on what God promised? Is that what you want for yourself? To understand what God planned for you, but not be able to see it because you refuse to follow his way? Or do you want to actually experience that breakthrough? Experience that new, experience that generational curse, experience being a leader? Do you want to actually experience that blessing that you have been praying and asking God to bring you to? If you want to experience it and you don't want to blow it, you have to learn how to trust God the entire way. Don't be obedient to step 1, but then refuse to take step 2. Don't be obedient to step 1 and 2, but then try to tweak step 3. And don't pick and choose what steps you want to take either. Don't be like, okay, I'm going to take step 1, but then I'm going to skip step 2. I'm going to go and jump to step 5. Then I'm going to do step 6. Then I'm going to skip step 7 and 8, jump to step 10. Don't do that. Follow God exactly what he tells you to do in the way that he tells you to do it every single step of the way. So If you're listening to this and you're wondering, like, how in the world am I supposed to do this? What I want you to do is I want you to think about the steps that you have been taking to something that God has been promising you. And I want you to go to him and get feedback. All you have to do is say, God, I did this today. How did I do? How do you feel about my works? When's the last time that we went to God and we asked him his opinion and his feedback on our works? When we do this, we might realize something that we felt was not perfect, something that we felt was cringy, is something that God is saying, well done to, something that God is in heaven cheesing at, something that God is impressed by, and something that God is admiring us for. When we do this, we might realize that we're tweaking his plans, where he tells us, yeah, I told you to do this and you're doing that. I told you to write a book about healing and you're writing a book about business, like we're tweaking his plans a little bit. He can bring that to our attention so that we can change things and get back on his path and actually see our breakthrough instead of walking blindly in disobedience and then being upset that nothing is changing. So go to God and ask him, how did I do? Those 4 simple words could change the whole trajectory of your journey. But I have talked way long enough, so that is all that I have for you today. Before we go, I do have an action step that I want to give you. So sometime this week, I want you to write down the promise that God gave you. I want you to make a checklist of all the steps that God has told you to take that you have taken. And I want you to ask yourself, why am I refusing to move forward? Is it out of fear? Is it because I feel like I want to perfect this? Have I actually followed this step to its fullest capacity? Write down what you think and how you feel about your journey. Then go to God and say, God, does my feelings match how you feel? Does my feelings represent your point of view? Get God's opinion and then write his opinion down and make your next step and your next move on this journey based on what God said to you. But that is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe so that you get a notification every time a new episode is released. Also, leave a review and let me and others know how you enjoyed the show. And if you want to stay connected, follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Prospering with Christ. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you next week.